All right. Hi, folks. Welcome to our fourth installation of Intro to the Prayer Book. Last week, we finally broke free from the first 15, 20 minutes of services and did some exploration of the Shema and the blessings around the Shema. This week, we're going to be looking at the Amidah, which is the standing prayer, um, which we typically recite the first few pages out loud and then take a few moments for quiet prayer. So we're going to take a look at the Amidah, which shows up in two distinct places during the Shabbat morning service, once during Shacharit, right after the prayer that we learned last week, the Michamocha, and one at the very end of the service in what's called the Musaf service. So I will show you the chart once more and remind you of the arc and choreography of the service. But before we turn to any new material, I think it's best practice when you're trying to teach, really, frankly, any teaching. But I think it is especially best practice when you're trying to teach music, new melodies, new words, to do a little bit of review before we head into any new material. So I'm only going to review, excuse me, the three prayers that we learned last week. But hopefully you have access to all of the recordings, all of the voice memos that one day you'll use as blackmail against me. You have that all in your inbox. So I hope that you are, listening and singing along throughout the week. So I'm going to share my screen. Go. So last week we started our new material with the Barchu, which is the call to prayer, which is the first prayer that we recite, on the way towards the Shema. I was very pleasantly surprised this past Shabbat when Hillel used two of the three melodies that I taught last week. And the third melody, which was the one that I didn't teach, is one that I mentioned, which was the Bob Marley version of Mi Chamocha. So I'm going to count that as maybe even a full 3 for 3 in terms of the melodies taught in this class and then the melodies that Hillel used on Shabbat morning. And it was fun to lock eyes with some of you on Shabbat morning in recognition that he was singing the tune that we had just learned. So no guarantees about any future weeks, but last week was a good one for our learning reinforced during the service. Now, okay, I won't put Mitchell on the spot. It's been too long. But you were excellent last week, Mitchell. You nailed the response part to the Baruchu, but we'll just do it all together. You all with your microphones muted, me with my microphone not muted, but let's sing all the parts together. Okay? So here we are, Baruchu. Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Yainananai, yainananai, yainai, nainanananai. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Let's just do that once more. It's a short one, so it's easy enough to review. Ready? Baruchu et Adonai HaMevorach, Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. Yananai, yananai, yanai, yanananai. Baruch Adonai HaMevorach Le'olam Va'ed. All right. I saw some lips moving, so I think some of you remembered that from last time. Um, we're gonna scroll down the next tefillah, the next prayer. We spoke briefly about El Adon, and I sent you a recording of a melody for El Adon, but we didn't take time last class actually learning it. But just to show you that that's one of the prayers in this section of the service. The next one we turn to is here on the bottom of page 153 in the Siddur. It's the last line in red transliteration on the left side of your screen, the last two lines of the Hebrew on the right side of the screen. And this is, we spoke about the blessings heading into the Shema. So if you recall, there's blessing about creation, the blessing about revelation. Those are the two before the Shema. And then there's the blessing over redemption or liberation, which is the blessing at the end of the Michamocha. We'll see that in a second. All right, so here we are, bottom of the page. Unfortunately, the English transliteration here only corresponds to the bolded line. So the next five words, Baruch Atah Adonai Yotzer HaMeorot, I don't have for you up on the screen right now in transliteration, but that is part of the song that we're about to sing. Okay? I was once in a musical workshop with Joey Weisenberg, who's an extraordinary Jewish musician. He's written a lot of original Jewish music, including the Nishmat Kol Chai Tivarech et Shimcha that we learned a few weeks ago. And Joey has this whole theory on the stages of learning a new song. And one of the stages of learning a new song is that you are able to start the song, right? So if I said, okay, Hyro, how does Or Chadash start? If Hyro was able to actually start off the melody, that's a certain stage of acquisition of learning the new song. So I'm not going to put Hyro or anyone on the spot right now. But now, Hyro, you know that you are on my screen and I am looking at you. You're one of the 5 Zoom faces that is available to me right now. But test yourself, right? Think to yourself, do you remember how this melody begins? And even if you don't, that's all right, because here we go. Or Chadash al Tzion ta'ir v'niskeh Hulanu mehira leoro again. Or Chadash al Tzion ta'ir v'niskeh Hulanu mehira leoro. Part 2. Or Chadash Al Tzion ta'ir v'niskeh Hulanu mehira leoro. Baruch Atah Adonai Yotzer HaMeorot. Let's sing it without the words. Yainai nai yananai nai nai yananai yanai yananai yananai nai nai yainai nai yananai nai nai yananai yanai yananai yanai nai nai yainai nai yananai nai nai yananai nai nai yananai yananai nai nai yai nai 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 yai nai nai yai nai 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 yai nai nai nai. All right, very good. That was Or Chadash. And then the third new melody and tefillah prayer that we learned last week was the Michamocha, right? Which comes, if you're just following my scrolling here, which comes after the Shema, after the V'ahavta, after a few pages of quiet, silent, not silent. Jews don't daven silently. We daven quietly. Actually, the rabbis say you're supposed to hear yourself even mumbling the words out loud, that there's something, I think they understood something about the brain science here, without giving them too much credit, that when you hear yourself say something out loud, it has a different impact on you than if you just say something quietly to yourself. So we don't really daven, we don't pray silently, we pray quietly. But you're supposed to actually hear yourself singing. All right, so here we are on the bottom of the page. It's the, does everyone see what I'm highlighting? This red transliteration on the left side of your page, that's the Michamocha. And then for those following in the Hebrew, it's starting with the bold over here. So this one often starts with the nigun, which is the wordless melody part, and then it makes its way into the michamocha. So the wordless part goes like this. Yanai na nai nai yana na na nai nai yanai na yana na na nai yanai na na nai yana na na nai yanai na nai nai yana na na nai. Ready? Mi chamocha ba'elim Adonai, mi kamocha nedar ba'kodesh nora tehilot o sefele shira chadasha shibchu geulim. This is just in Hebrew. Sorry, there's no transliteration. Leshimcha al sefat hayam yachad kulam hoduvim lichu ve'amru Adonai yimloch le'olam va'ed Yanai na nai 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 Yanai na nai 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 yana na na nai Yanai na nai nai yana na na nai nai Ay na 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 ya na 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 na. Then sometimes this is what Hillel will do. Okay, just the final blessing. Remember we spoke about how sometimes he does yai nai nais and then comes back in just with the final words on the page. So he would do na 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 na. Baruch atah Adonai Ga'al Yisrael Yanai na nai 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 Yanai na nai 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 na 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 nai. All right. That was review. Did we remember those somewhat? You can give me a, this is how we elicit participation on in a Zoom meeting. Yes, I fully remember all of that, and I was singing it with you. And actually, Rabbi Panitz, you were a little bit flat on the end of Michamocha, and I sang it correctly. That's what this means, okay? Who are you again? What are we singing? Is this even Hebrew? And then anything in between. Show me how we're doing. Okay. All right. I got no thumbs down. That's I'll take that as a win. All right, so friends, we're going to move into some new material now, which, as I said before, is both sequentially comes right after the Michamocha, right, the Amidah, but also shows up later in the service. So tonight's learning, I think, it's like double. It's double credit or whatever, because what you're going to learn tonight gets applied more or less with some differences that I'll show you in two different places in the service. Okay, and for those who appreciate the timestamps here, I would say that we typically make our way into the first Amidah at around 10:10 a.m. And then we make our way into the Musaf Amidah. This is the one that's going to get me into trouble because this happens after the sermon. Okay, I'll just leave it at that. This one happens after the sermon. You can tell me what time you think that is. Okay, so that's the chronology of it, but let me show you in the flow of the service. This is a chart that we looked at in the very first class that probably when we looked at it in the first class, it was very hard to make sense of because there's so much going on. But my hope is that by class number 4, we are more familiar with some of the terms that are here on this chart. So I'll review it, right? Birkot HaShachar are blessings that traditionally you do at home. All right, so when you show up to IKAR at 9:30, we're not starting in this first rectangle. We're starting in the second rectangle, Psuke de Zimra, right? That's the Baruch She'amar, Ki Le'olam Chasto, Hallelujah. Those were the ones that we learned, okay? Then we make our way Nishmat Kochai, I think I taught that to you. Then we make our way into Shema and its blessings. That's what we focused on last week. That's what we just reviewed right now. And the very next thing, you see this, is the Amidah. Now, let's follow this arrow down. You see how it says unique wording for third blessing? And then it says middle petitionary blessings are replaced by a single blessing. I will explain that in a moment. We then go into the silent prayer. That's the part of the Amidah. That's still part of the Amidah. That's part of the Amidah that we don't do out loud together. Then we go to the Torah service. We're going to try to tackle that next week. That's a big one. And then you see this dotted line that goes up between Torah and conclusion, Musaf. And Musaf includes another Amidah. It doesn't say it clearly, but that's what is being referred to here. Okay, so the Amidah is both between the Shema and the Torah service, and again, after the Torah service, and before Ein Kelohenu and the Mourner's Kaddish and the final prayers that conclude the service. All right, so any questions about that, about the placement of the Amidah? Everyone understands why I'm saying there are 2 Amidahs that we say? Okay. You're welcome, by the way. When you have questions, you can put them in the chat. I'm doing my best to keep my eyes on the chat. Or when we're a full group, you can always turn your microphone on and just belt out the question. So let's just take a moment to break down what is the Amidah. Amidah is the Hebrew word for standing prayer. That's what it means. La'amod is the Hebrew word for to stand. And Amidah means standing prayer, the standing, essentially. This prayer has 2 other names in the original sources that cite it. One is Shmona Esrei. Does anyone recognize that Hebrew word? Shmona Esrei, Shmona Esrei. I could break it down. Shmona is the number 8, and Esrei is like Eser, which is the number 10. Okay, so the other name for this prayer is 18. You can see how creative the rabbis are in titling things. Standing prayer and 18. And the third name is, and this is actually very interesting and instructive in terms of how the rabbis understood this prayer. They call the Amidah Ha-Tfilah, the prayer. Which, when I say it's instructive, what I mean is that this, according to the rabbis, is the central prayer of the whole service. And lucky for us, we get it twice. So why is it called 18? So keep in mind that the liturgy that we recite when we pray is different based on when the prayer service is taking place. Okay, so the two primary distinctions are weekday versus Shabbat or holiday. And there is some, if you see that as, if you think of it as a Venn diagram, right, there's some liturgy that we recite only on a weekday, some liturgy that we recite only on Shabbat or a holiday, and then a fairly large middle of the Venn diagram where there's liturgy that we recite whether it's a weekday or Shabbat or first day of Passover or whatever it might be. Okay. The other vector, I think this would be the right word. The other vector by which the liturgy will change is the time of day. So Jews traditionally pray 3 times a day, morning, afternoon, and evening. And the liturgy is different. Again, Venn diagram style, but different between the 3 services. And again, there's overlapping. So during a weekday service, interestingly, whether it's morning, afternoon, or evening, the Amidah is made up of 18 distinct blessings. That's why it's called Shmona Esrei, right? Shmona Esrei, 18. Now, the funny thing, or the maddening thing, depending on your sense of humor, is that the weekday Amidah called the 18. Anyone want to guess how many blessings it has?
19.
19. Very good. Welcome to Rabbinic Math 101. Yes, the prayer named 18 for the number of blessings it has 19 blessings in it. I won't sort of get into the whole story now, but it seems that originally it had 18 blessings, and then over the course of time, a 19th blessing was added. But there is much scholarly debate about which is the 19th blessing, because we don't actually have early manuscripts of what the 18 blessings were. So the Talmud will refer to the Shmona Esrei as a mandatory prayer, as the prayer to recite 3 times a day, but it does not detail what those 18 blessings are. It seemed to be a given. But I should say that this is one of the oldest prayers that we have, likely dated to Second Temple period, somewhere close to the year 0. Which is, if you remember back from our first class, when I told you that much of our liturgy was originated in the response, as a response to the destruction of the Second Temple, 70 of the Common Era. This tells you that this is an even earlier prayer. So the weekday Amidah has 19 blessings, but the Shabbat Amidah, the one that we're going to look at today, whether it's in Musaf or it's in Shacharit, right after the Michamocha, does not have 19 blessings, because the structure of the Amidah, of the weekday Amidah, is as follows. Blessings of praise, blessings of petition, asking God for things, and blessings of thanksgiving. The middle section, asking God for things, is 13 out of the 19 in the weekday Amidah, but there is a tradition on Shabbat not to ask for things. It's very interesting. I mean, we could have a whole conversation about whether we like that or not, or what is, to what degree that really corresponds with the human spiritual experience. But the thought is that on Shabbat, we are meant to shift our attention away from what we want to what we have, right? And to inhabit a posture of contentedness and gratitude for the world as is. And then the rest of the week, we fight like hell for the world as it ought to be, right? And we ask for all the things that help make it that way. Um, yes, okay. Leah, the Misha Berach for healing is an exception that I'm not going to get into right now. But yes, the Misha Berach for healing. There are certain exceptions that the rabbis permit. I think because of a kind of a conceit that is there really prayer without at some point asking for things. So yes, there are certain exceptions, but the Shabbat Amidah more or less strips away the whole petition um, section of the Amidah and replaces it with paragraphs focusing on holiness, holiness of the day and holiness of God. And we're going to take a closer look at one piece of that called the Kedusha a little bit later in our class. One more point, and then we'll make our way into learning some of this liturgy. I explained why it has the name 18, right? Because it has 19 blessings. That was clear. Why would the rabbis call it Hatfilah, right? The prayer. What do they imagine is happening in this? So the rabbis feel that this is the central moment of the service where we imagine ourselves as standing in the presence of God and saying the most important things that we can think of to say to God. I want to remind you that last class we looked at the Shema, right? Which we often think of as the most important line of Jewish liturgy. The rabbis understood the Amidah, the standing prayer, as the peak, the central moment of the service. And we have worked our way up, right? Spiritually preparing ourselves to stand in the presence of God and say what we need to say. And I'll make one point that I think reinforces this. The rabbis asked the question in the halachic, in the legal literature, when are you allowed to add in your own personal extemporaneous prayers? Right? If you are using the prayer book and just going from one page to the next, you could have a whole service where the only words you're saying are someone else's words, right? And that's in fact how many people pray when they walk into synagogue and pray, right? They never do the spiritual work of asking, what are the words on my heart, and let me give voice to them as well. And the rabbis clearly in their creation of the service emphasize fixed liturgical prayer over personal extemporaneous spontaneous prayer, but they say the moment that you are encouraged to add in your own personal prayers is at the very end of the Amidah, before you say Oseh Shalom B'Romav Hu Yaseh Shalom Aleinu. That's the moment where you take your prayer book, right, and you put it like this, or you close it, and you close your eyes, or you put your hand on your heart, you do whatever you need to do to layer on your own words onto the words of the Siddur, which I think goes hand in hand with understanding this moment as the moment where you're really supposed to be as focused as possible, as intentional as possible, and as honest and open as possible. Okay. Any questions or points you all want to make about the Amidah, what this prayer is, how it came to be, its function in the service? Janet, yeah.
Are the things that are eliminated from the Shabbat, Shmona Esrei, work-related things that you would be making or breaking? Is that why they're eliminated?
No, they are petitionary prayers. They are requests for all sorts of wonderful things that we want, right? Requests for wisdom, for forgiveness, for deliverance, for healing, for the gathering of the exiles, for agricultural production. So maybe that last one intersects with the prohibited labor on Shabbat, but I think it's less because the content of the prayers somehow, bumps up against the specific prohibited actions on Shabbat, and more because of this almost emotional, psychological posture that the rabbis want us to inhabit on Shabbat, which is to move away from a focus on the lack and the request for filling the lack, and instead to focus on the fullness that we have, even if it is a broken fullness.
Beautiful. Thank you.
Florine.
I feel the Amidah is very special, as you said, because the ego is gone, that we are stepping into an affirmation of being part of creation, and we are joined with animate, inanimate, angels, luminaries, all that is in this gorgeous creation. We are joined in a gratitude that we are part of it. So at that point in the service, I don't think we personally are anything but souls talking. And I do have to tell you, Rabbi, I get really upset when people talk in the back of the synagogue, that whole line that talks through the whole yak, 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 through the Amidah. I wish you could say something once.
I hear you, Florine. I hear you. The rabbis, to your second point and then to your first point, the rabbis clearly, the laws that they shape around how we are meant to behave during services, I would say, reached their peak, what I'm going to call strictness, but that's not, you'll understand in a moment, that's not really the right word, right? Their peak strictness during the Amidah, because they really want each individual there to be fully focused, as present as possible to the words that are being said during the Amidah. And there are leniences at other points of the services where you're allowed to greet your neighbor. You're allowed to ask, someone walks in during Baruch She'amar. The rabbis have no problem with you turning to your neighbor and saying, "Welcome to IKAR." It's so great to see you. They don't want you saying that, even though that's a lovely thing to say during the Amidah, because they want 100% of our focus on what's happening liturgically in that moment. And so when you look at the legal literature around how we're meant to behave during the Amidah, it reaches its sort of most detailed specificity, all aimed at helping us concentrate and focus and, yes, not be social during that moment. Florine referenced a kind of a angelic choir during the Amidah, and we're gonna take a closer look at that. So hold on to that note. Okay. I will cover the choreography of the Amidah when we're actually looking at the prayer, so you can see which words are accompanied by which dance moves. Okay. All right, so let me take us back in here. Okay, so one of the really tricky, hard things about learning the Amidah is that the first 2 pages is a lot of Hebrew without what I'm going to call sort of song-like melodies. Every service, whether it's a weekday service or a Shabbat service, a morning service, afternoon service, or an evening service, has what's called nusach, its own musical system, where if you're just chanting the liturgy and you're not singing like a sort of a set piece, it has a particular musical scale, musical notation that it follows. Some are in the major key, some are minor key, and the different nusachs, the different musical modes are meant to convey different meaning and emotions. So the whole first two pages of the Amidah are chanted in nusach. It's not really a song. So what I'm going to do, we're not going to really spend a lot of time learning that because it's going to be it's very hard to teach musically. But I'm going to sing it for you once. I send it to you as a recording, just so you can hear what it's like. And then we're going to focus our learning on the songs that are sung during the Kedusha, which is the third page of the Amidah. So, all right. So I'm trying to set this up so you can see the transliteration. Okay. Does everyone see where it says Shacharit Amidah, bottom of right here? Baruch Atah Adonai. Okay, that's where this begins. And we're over here on the left-hand side of the page in the Hebrew. Okay, so the first thing that happens in the Amidah is that we take 3 steps back and 3 steps forward. Now, if you take 3 steps back and 3 steps forward, where do you land? That's right, in the same place that you started. Right? This is a piece of choreography that is meant to help us step into the space of heightened concentration, of renewed focus. It's a way of, I think of it almost as, almost like entering into a portal of some sort, right? We're 3 steps back, 3 steps forward. Some people like to think of it as like where I've been, where I'm going, and I'm here. Right? It's a way of arriving into the experience of the Amidah. So if you've seen people do that, that's what's happening. 3 steps back, 3 steps forward, and then the Hillel or whoever is leading will chant the opening 2 pages. And sometimes it's easy to sing along with him. Sometimes it's not. It depends if he wants you to sing along with him or not. How quickly we're trying to move. The words that I'm about to chant right now are the exact same words for the Shacharit Amidah as the Musaf Amidah. There is no difference between these 2 opening blessings. Okay? This is what it sounds like. Baruch Atah Adonai Eloheinu v'Elohei Avoteinu Elohei Avraham Elohei Sarah Elohei Yitzchak, Elohei Rivka, Elohei Yaakov, Elohei Leah, Elohei Rachel, Ha'el Hagadol, Hagibur v'Hanora, El Elyon, Gomel Chasadim Tovim, V'Konei Hakol, V'Zocher Chastei Avot, U'Mevi Goel Livnei V'neihem, Leman Shemo B'Yahava, Melech, turn the page, Melech Ozer U'Moshia U'Magen, Baruch Atah Adonai, Magen Avraham. Okay, let's pause. I just want to point out a few things about what I just chanted. This opening section of the Amidah is sometimes called the Avot. Avot is the plural of the Hebrew word Abba, which is the Hebrew word for father or dad, right? So this section is called Avot, fathers. But as you could hear from what I chanted, it was not just Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, but it included the matriarchs as well, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah. And if you just look at the English of what I just chanted, right? Blessed are you, Adonai, our God and God of our ancestors, God of Abraham, God of Sarah, God of Isaac, God of Rivka, etc., etc., etc. Great, mighty, awe-inspiring, transcendent God who acts with kindness, loves, creates all, who remembers the loving deeds of our ancestors, who will lovingly bring a redeemer to their children's children for the sake of divine honor. And then, blessed are you. You are the sovereign who helps and guards, saves, and shields. Blessed are you, God, shield of Abraham. What I will say about this paragraph that I find really compelling, right? We could have a whole class just looking at the language of this paragraph. I find it compelling that we begin this central moment of prayer, recognizing that we are in relationship with a God who was in relationship with our spiritual ancestors. Right? Same God who has pursued relationships with Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Sarah, Rebecca, Rachel, and Leah is the God that we are praying to. But notice grammatically, it could say God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. That's not what it says. God of Abraham, God of Isaac, God of Jacob, God of Sarah, God of Rebecca, which the Hasidic commentators will point out is meant to emphasize that yes, it's the same God that we are praying to, but that every individual has a distinct relationship with that God. Abraham related to God in a certain way, which was different from how Isaac did, which was different from how Rachel did, which was different from how Jacob did. Right? So when we approach this moment, one of the things you can think about is, what do you mean? Like, what is Elohe Arlene, Elohe Sally, Elohe Danielle, right? And what is similar between that God and Elohe Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, and what is different? And we celebrate both the similarity and the difference. Okay, the other piece of choreography is that the opening blessing, Baruch Atah Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohe Avoteinu. We bow, Baruch Atah. And then what is conventional is that you stand up straight again before you say Adonai. Blessed are you, Adonai, Eloheinu v'Elohe Avoteinu, right? Standing up straight again. This is all, the logic of prostrations. It's not something that American culture, I think, understands quite well. I'm looking at Leah right now because Leah, who lives in Japan, I think has a different relationship to prostration than many of us do, right? But this is a sign of respect, of honor, of deference, of acknowledgement of whose presence we are standing in. That, I think, is what is meant to be conveyed through the bowing. Okay, so we just did the blessing on the top of the page here. We are now entering into a new section called Gevurot. You can see how it says second bracha, God's saving care. So we are moving thematically from the God of our ancestors. And maybe as I'm chanting, you'll take a look at the English and you'll see, right, which aspects of God we are emphasizing in this part of the prayer. Okay, so we just did Baruch Atah Adonai Magen Avraham, Atah Gibor Leolam Adonai, Mechayei Metim Atah Rab Lehoshia, and right now we add Mashiv Haruach Umorid Hagashem. This is now the most sing-songy part. Mechalkel Chaim Bechesed, Mechayim Meitim Berachamim Rabim, Somech Noflim Berofech Oholim, Umatir Asurim, Umekayim Emunato, Lishene Afar, Michamocha Ba'al Gevurot, Umido Mehelach, Melech Memit Umechaye, ומצמיח ישועה, ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני, מחיי המתים. Okay, we do not bow for this third blessing, the Baruch Atah Adonai Mechayei Metim. Traditionally, we do not bow. There are two bows in the first section of the Amidah, and that's with the opening words and then with the closing blessing in the ancestors portion, Magen Avraham. Just so you could sort of hear the nusach, right? Melech Ozer Umoshia Umagen. ונאמן אתה לחיות מתים. ברוך אתה אדוני מגן אברהם. ברוך אתה אדוני מחיי המתים. Right? So if you can hear the musical mode here, that does get repeated, but it's hard to teach because it's not a song with, A, B, back to A, chorus, etc. Okay, so that is okay, so that is the first 2 pages of the Amidah, right? You see I'm on the Musaf tab. If I go over to the Shacharit Amidah tab, it's the exact same thing. First page, second page. All right, so now we make our way into the Kedusha. Let's do a little repeat after me singing, because I don't want to wait too long to do that. And then I'll try to make sure that I explain a little bit what's going on in Kedusha. We're going to focus on the Musaf Kedusha. And I'll show you that there are some similarities, some differences between Musaf Kedusha and Shacharit Kedusha. All right, so let me make this a little bit bigger. There we go. Let me bring up the transliteration side. Here we go. Okay. All right, so here we are on the bottom right of your screen with the Kedusha, and here we are on the left side of your screen with the Hebrew. Let me think. Where do I want to start? All right, so the opening words, the melody goes something like this. Ya na 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 ya na na ya na 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 ya na 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 ya na na ya na na na. Okay, just let's try it without the words. Repeat after me. Ya na 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 na. You try. Ya na 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 na. Yeah, okay. Yeah, na 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 na. Yeah, na 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 na. This is gonna be really hard to teach. Let's pause on this. I'm gonna teach you a different melody. If we have time, we'll come back to this one. Okay. Skip down to the second one over here. This is a Hillel Tige original that I think is melodically a little bit easier. Okay. So this one goes like this. Kevodo male olam mishar tavsho alim zeh lazeh. All right, so we're going to work just on that phrase first, okay? Kevodo male olam. You try. Kevodo Ma'alei olam. Let's try it again. Kevodo Ma'alei olam. You try. Kevodo Ma'alei olam. Listen. Mishar tavsho alim zeh lazeh. All right, let's lead our way into that. It's hard to pick it up in the middle. So sing with me. Kevodo ma'alei olam mishar yeshar tav shoalim zeh lazeh. Say that again. Kevodo malei olam v'yeshar tav shoalim zeh lazeh. That musical phrase, I know this is hard. This is hard what I'm teaching right now. That musical phrase repeats twice. Okay? So let's try to do the whole phrase again. I'll sing it twice and I'll sing it 4 times, okay? So you can sing it either as a repeat after me or you can try to sing with me all the times. It's the full musical phrase. Let me try to make this bigger for you all. Is that helpful? Okay. Kevodo malei olam mishar tav shoalim zeh lazeh. Kevodo malei olam mishar tav shoalim zeh lazeh. Time 3. Kevodo malei olam mishar tav shoalim zeh lazeh. Kevodo malei olam mishar tav shoalim zeh lazeh. And then it goes Aye mekom kevodo. You try. Aye mekom kevodo. Yai nai 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 nai. Try that. Yai nai 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 nai. Again. Yai nai 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 nai. Okay, that whole phrase is. Aye mekom kevodo. Ay, 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 ay. Aye mekom kevodo. Yai, nai, 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 nai. Now, there's a little bit of a round or that happens here, right? Nai, 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 nai. Mekom kevodo, na 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 na, yai na nai nai, yai na nai nai nai, yai nai 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 nai, yai na nai nai, yai na nai nai nai, yai nai 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 nai. Just try to jump in, yai na nai nai, yai na nai nai nai, yai nai 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 nai, yai na nai nai, yai na nai nai nai. Again, yai nai 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 nai, yai na nai nai, yai na nai nai nai. Yai nai 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 nai, yai na nai nai, yai na nai nai nai. And then he'll do something musically very hard. He goes, whoa, whoa, ay, 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 just that one word. Ay, 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 ay. Aye, 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 aye. All right, let me try to break that down. Woo! Hillel, you owe me one for teaching the people your melody here. Okay, so this part, right? We've just done the Aye mekom kevodo. Whoa, ay nai nai, ay nai nai nai. Yai nai 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 nai, yai nai nai, yai nai nai nai. Yai nai 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 nai, yai nai nai, yai nai nai nai. Yai nai 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 nai. Whoa, whoa, ay, yai, 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 ay, yay. Aye, 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 aye. Try to sing with me. Aye, 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 aye. All right. Let's do the honest. Give me the honest thumbs up. It's a tough one. How we doing? Kacha kacha. Okay, so the nice thing about this melody, I think this is a nice thing, is that we then use the same melody for the next line of text. All right, so let me try to show you what that looks and sounds like. So we're now in the mim como. All right, so we've just done aye, 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 and then we will say Lumatam Baruch Yomeru Baruch Kavod Adonai Mimekomo. That's just this bolded line, and then he'll do Mihim Komo Uhifen Verachamim. Do you hear it? Kevodo Maleolam. Mihim komo hu yifen berachamim veheyachonam ham yachadim shemo. Okay, let's try that. Mihim komo hu yifen berachamim veheyachonam ham yachadim shemo. Again. Mihim komo hu yifen berachamim veheyachonam ham yachadim shemo. He then carries that same musical phrase into the next line. Okay. Ham yachadim shemo. Erev avoker bechol yom tamid. Same, right? Mihim komo yifen berachamim. Erev avoker bechol yom tamid. Ha'amayim be'ahava shema omrim. Okay, so that second part is the same music, just to some different words. Let's just try that with Erev. Erev avoker bechol yom tamid ha'amayim be'ahava shema omrim. And then he goes back to the beginning. Mim komo hu yifein. Ya nai 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 nai. Ya nai 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 nai. Ya nai 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 nai. Ya nai 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 nai. Whoa whoa I aye, 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 aye. Same word. Aye, 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 aye. And sometimes that just keeps going on. Aye, 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 aye. Hamayim yava shema omrim shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Notice that the aye refrain, right, comes from one word in the Kevodo paragraph. That word isn't repeated in the Mimkomo paragraph, but it's still the musical refrain of the Mimkomo lines. Right, so that's the thread between the two. Okay, let's sing Kvodo and Mimkomo, and then we'll move on. All right, you with me? Here we go. Kevodo male olam mishar tav shoalim ze laze. Kevodo male olam mishar tav shoalim ze laze. Aye, aye, mekom kevodo. Oh, aye, nay, nay, aye, nay, nay, nay. Oh, aye, nay, nay, aye, nay, nay, nay. Oh, aye, nay, nay, aye, nay, nay, nay. Oh, 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 aye, aye, aye. Aye, 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 aye. Lumatam Baruch Yomeru Baruch Kavod Adonai Mimikomo. Harmonium Mimkomo. Uhifen berachamim veyachon ham yachadim shemo erev vavo oker vechol yom tamid ha'amayim be'ahava shema omim mihim komo uhifen nai 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 nai. Whoa, I na na na, I na 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 na. Whoa, I na na na, I na na na. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Ay, nay, nay, ay, 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 Aye, 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 aye. All right. Those are really, really, I think, core IKAR melodies. I mean, they're Hillel Tigay originals. Kedusha, this section of the service is really one of the challenges is that he really uses different melodies from week to week. There's a lot of musical options that are available here, and so no guarantees that you're gonna hear this upcoming Shabbat. But I think he tries to incorporate it as much as possible because it's a great melody. I mean, he wrote a great melody. As hard as it is to teach, and as impossible it is for me to nail the musical tradition of leading into the IA. You could probably hear that. I don't exactly know how he does that, but it's got a real sing with me vibe to it. So I hope that you'll feel a little bit more confident singing with him for that section of the Kedusha. I want to teach you a melody that we do use I almost every week for Lidor Vador, which is consistent between the Shacharit Kedusha and the Musaf Kedusha. So not all of the words in Kedusha, which is the third page of the Amidah, right? That's the page we were just looking at, are the same between the earlier Amidah and the later Amidah. But what is the same is each of them has the same closing paragraph called Lidor Vador, which means from generation to generation. All right, so let's take a look at this. Okay, so here we are on the right side of your screen. I think I need to do that. All right, so this is the paragraph. In Hebrew, it's right over here. All right, so let me I'll sing it once through so you can hear it, and then I'll do my best to break it down musical phrase by musical phrase. I think some of you will nod when you hear this because we really do it with some frequency. Lidor vador nagid God lecha ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש לדור ודור נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים קדושתך נקדיש ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה. Nay, 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 nay. Yay, nay, 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 yay, nay, 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 nay. Yay, nay, 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 nay. Yay, nay, 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 nay. Sound familiar? Okay. So let's try to teach this phrase by phrase. This is a beautiful melody. I'm not sure of the origin. If anyone knows, please feel free to write it into the chat who wrote this melody or where it comes from. All right, repeat after me. Lidor vador, you try. Lidor vador again. Lidor vador. Lidor vador. Nagid God lecha, you try. Nagid God. Nagid God lecha. Nagid God lecha. Nagid God lecha. I'll put those together. Lidor vador, nagid God lecha. Lidor vador, nagid God lecha. Let's do that again. Lidor vador, nagid God lecha. Lidor vador, nagid God lecha. I'll try. Ulenetzach netzachim, ulenetzach netzachim, ulenetzach netzachim. Kedushatcha nakdish, kedushatcha nakdish, kedushatcha nakdish, kedushatcha nakdish. Ulenetzach netzachim, kedushatcha nakdish. Ulenetzach netzachim, kedushatcha nakdish. Ulenetzach netzachim, kedushatcha nakdish. Let's try to do that whole line. Okay. Lidor vador, nagid God lecha. Ulenetzach netzachim, kedushatcha nakdish. Again, lidor vador, nagid God lecha. Ulenetzach netzachim, kedushatcha nakdish. Lidor vador, nagid God lecha. Ulenetzach netzachim. And then the last time it goes up. Kedushatcha nakdish, you try. Kedushatcha nakdish. Kedushatcha nakdish. Kedushatcha nakdish. Okay, so the second time through, I know we were just sort of repeating it over and over and over again, but the first time it's L'dor vador nagid God lecha, L'netzach netzachim, Kedushatcha nakdish, nakdish. And then the second time it's L'dor vador nagid God lecha, L'netzach netzachim, Kedushatcha nakdish, Kedushatcha nakdish. All right, so let's try singing just that first line as we would in the service. Right, the first time going down for Kedushatcha nakdish, and the second time going up for Kedushatcha nakdish. Yes? Yes. Lidor vador nagid God lecha, ulenetzach netzachim, Kedushatcha nakdish. Lidor vador nagid God lecha, ulenetzach netzachim, Kedushatcha nakdish. Good. I think. I can't actually hear you. And then line 2. Okay? I think I'm going to have to take down the key because of, yes, I'm going to have to take down the key. Okay? So it goes, V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush le'olam va'ed. Okay, let's try that. I'll break it down. V'shivchacha, you try. V'shivchacha. V'shivchacha, you try. V'shivchacha. Eloheinu mipinu, Eloheinu mipinu. Let's just put those three words together, right? We're here, folks, right? V'shivchacha, this line, okay? V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu. You try. V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu. Listen. Lo yamush. You try. Lo yamush again. Lo yamush. Lo yamush. Le'olam va'ed. Le'olam va'ed. Le'olam va'ed. Le'olam va'ed. So, v'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu, lo yamush le'olam va'ed. V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu, lo yamush le'olam va'ed. V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu, lo yamush le'olam va'ed. I think I'm singing it the same way. I'm not sure. Maybe I'm changing it up from one time to the next in terms of the ending. But that then goes into the last line of it is the Ki El Melech. Okay, so it's V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu lo yamush le'olam va'ed. Ki El Melech. It's the same. V'shivchacha Ki El Melech. You try. Ki El Melech again. Ki El Melech. Gadol v'kadosh, Gadol v'kadosh, Ata. God, Ki HaMelech Gadol v'kadosh, Ki HaMelech Gadol v'kadosh. What did I just do? V'shivchacha Eloheinu mipinu, lo yamush le'olam va'ed. Ki HaMelech Gadol v'kadosh, Ata, Ata again, Ata again, Ata. Yai nai 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 yai na nai nai na 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 nai yai nai 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 yai nai 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 nai. Lidor vador nagid God lecha ulenetzach netzachim kedushatcha nagdish. Lidor vador nagid God lecha ulenetzach netzachim kedushatcha nagdish. V'shivcha Eloheinu mipinu, lo yamush le'olam va'ed. Ki El Melech Gadol v'kadosh, Ata. Let's do it with the words again. V'dor v'dor nagid God lecha, ulenetzach netzachim kedushatcha nakdish. V'dor v'dor נגיד גודלך ולנצח נצחים, קדושתך נקדיש ושבחך אלוהינו מפינו, לא ימוש לעולם ועד, כי אל מלך גדול וקדוש אתה. Okay. It's a really beautiful melody. It's one that we ought to know and really belt out. I mean, there's really even the music like really wants you to go for it, to like really to try to hit that note. All right. I did send you a recording of the first one that I tried to teach and then abandoned 15 seconds into it. So it does live in your inbox. I'm not going to sort of go back and try to teach it to you now. But I want to just tell you what else is in your inbox for 2 minutes. And then I want to take the last 10 minutes to take a step back and look a little bit closer at what is going on this page, because it's actually quite spectacular. The Kedusha is one of the, I think, most audacious pieces of liturgy in our Siddur. So I want to take a moment to look at that. So I'm going to go back into my shared screen. It's just such a shame. Now I can only see 5 of you instead of 15 of you. Okay. So the Shacharit Amidah.
Rabbi Panitz, you can change your view and have more faces up on the top of the screen if you want.
Noted.
Okay.
Thank you, Janet. I see that. Oh my goodness. No, it still just gives me 6. Anyway, Janet, you'll show me after class how to do it. Okay. So I know that not everyone here is a Hebrew reader, but you can see that this is the Shacharit Kedusha, and I'll just point out to you, it doesn't have, how does that go again? That was a test for you all to see if you reached that stage of song acquisition. Some of you passed, right? It has Az B'Kol. It's a totally different piece of liturgy, which we sometimes sing as Az B'Kol Rash Gadol Ahadir V'Chazak Mashmim Kol. Different melody, different words. What is the same between the Kedushas is the some of the bolded text. The Kadosh, 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 Baruch Kevod Adonai Mimkomo, and Yimloch Adonai Leolam is the same in both Kedushas. And the other thing that's the same is the, how does it go again? That Lador Vador melody? Someone's humming. I hear someone. Florine, bless you. Yeah, it's one of these days, someone's going to turn their microphone on when I ask you that question, right? So they both have the same. They both have Lador Vador. So what's in common is the bolded lines and the Lador Vador. I gave you recordings for all of this. The beginning of the Shacharit Kedusha. That's the Az B'Kol Nekadesh Shimcha Ba'olam. I gave you a recording for that, so you can learn it while you're too excited to go to sleep tonight because of your learning from this class. You can pop in your headphones and listen to it. I also gave you a recording of the Na'aritzcha, which is the first line of the Musaf Amidah that I abandoned my teaching attempt of. Okay? So that's what else you have in your inbox. All right, let's take a moment to look at this page together. We're in the Musaf Amidah Kedusha. So first of all, the word Kedusha should sound familiar to you all because it uses a Hebrew root that shows up all over the place. Kuf Daled Shin, Kadosh, right? We know that word Kiddush, right? Which we think of as the blessing over grape juice. Kiddush, Kadosh, Kedusha, Kiddushin, maybe one you're less familiar with. Kiddushin, that's the Aramaic word for marriage. Very interesting. All of this has to do with the concept of holiness. So these are holiness. This is a holiness prayer. Now, the choreography of the Amidah, and particularly of the Kedusha, is that we put our feet together as if we were standing on one adjoined leg, because tradition depicts the angels as standing on one leg. And what we are doing in this moment of the service is we are emulating angels. We are pretending to be, aspiring to be angels for just a moment. And the liturgy that this Kedusha page is built around is things that the prophets record the angels saying. So, Kadosh, 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 Adonai Tzvaot, Melochol Haaretz Kevodo, is a direct quote from the prophet Isaiah, who has a vision of angels who are gathered around the divine throne, and they are turning to each other in awe at what they are seeing and saying, "Holy, holy, holy, the whole world is filled with God's glory." And we, for a moment, give ourselves permission to say what the angels say, to see what the angels see in that moment, right? And then the other direct quote that this Kedusha prayer is built around is Baruch Kevod Adonai Mimkomo. Blessed is Adonai's glory throughout, well, really, in God's place. And that is a direct quote from the prophet Ezekiel, who is describing his vision of what the angels see. So these two lines, Kadosh, 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 Baruch Kavod Adonai Mimkomo, are direct quotes of the angels. I said before that we put our feet together. You might have noticed or seen that when we say the three words Kadosh, 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 we go on our tippy toes 3 times. And you know, it's like we are ascending into the angelic realm for just a moment. We're sort of mimicking the ascent of human realm into angelic realm by uttering those words and also, you know, launching ourselves, as it were, into the angelic realm. The language around those two verses is this really intricate, beautiful sort of midrash, liturgical midrash. And I want to just clue you into some of the words and sort of how it was done. Okay, so Na'aritzcha v'nakdishecha. Nakdishecha has the same Hebrew word kadosh. We're starting out with holiness, right? We revere and we sanctify you on earth as your name is sanctified in heaven. That's literally right. That's what we're doing here. We're going to say the words to you here on earth as is said about you in the angelic realm, right? In the heavenly realm. And the prophets and the prophet Isaiah described that the angels cried out to each other, "Holy, holy, holy," right? God is holy. God's glory fills the whole world. The last word is kivodo. Melochla arts kivodo. That sends us into kivodo, right? It's from one word to the next word, right? So now we have the kivodo section, building, that God's glory fills the universe. One angelic chorus asks, where is the place of God's glory? Another responds, now we get our direct quote, praised is Adonai's glory in wherever God dwells, in God's place. By the way, I just want to point out part of the audacity here. God's glory fills the universe. Then the angelic chorus says, where is the place of God's glory? Isn't that a funny question to ask after the declarative statement, God's glory fills the universe? Seems like there is doubt even in the angelic realm about how we can find and be found by God, right? Where God is to be found. So the rabbis invent this question. Where is the place of God's glory? Is not in Ezekiel. What's in Ezekiel is Baruch Kavod Adonai Mimkomo, praise is Adonai's glory. So it's almost like the rabbis are playing Jeopardy, right? The answer is praise is Adonai's glory wherever God dwells. And then the rabbis create the question, where is the place of God's glory? And then they answer it with Ezekiel's words. It ends with Mimkomo, and then that launches us into, you got it, Mimkomo hu yifen derachamim, right? So we are now exploring the theme of where God dwells, what happens, right? Because God's glory is in the place where God dwells. Well, tell us more about that place where God dwells. Where God dwells, God turns with compassion towards the people, us. We abandon for the moment our angelic status, right? And God says to us human beings, this is part of what I want from you. Say the Shema twice a day, right? Remember that I'm here. Remember that I'm one. And so then what do? We say the Shema, right? Pama'im bi'ahava shema omrim. Twice we say the Shema. Shema Yisrael Adonai Eloheinu Adonai Echad. Now with the key word of Eloheinu, or some believe with the key word of God's oneness, we're launched into the next paragraph. Right now we're exploring the theme of God, our God is one. Our God is one, and God is Eloheinu, Avinu, Malkeinu, Moshienu, right? Our God is one, and in God's oneness, God can manifest to us in different ways, right? As our God, as our creator, as our sovereign, as our redeemer. The liturgy is riffing on Eloheinu Echad. Right? God is one. God is one even as God inhabits these different identities to us. Right, so we have the Hu Eloheinu paragraph, concluding with Ani Adonai Elohechem. Right, God is one, and then God says, this is another direct quote from all over the Torah. Right, God often, again and again and again, says, I am Adonai, your God. And then finally, we get the aspirational statement. This is from the book of Psalms. Yimloch Adonai le'olam, Elohayach Tzion l'dor v'dor, hallelujah. Adonai will reign forever, your God, O Zion, from generation to generation. Oh, did you say l'dor v'dor? There we go. L'dor v'dor, nagiga lecha. Right, that sends us into the final paragraph, which very beautifully ends with Baruch atah Adonai ha'el ha-kadosh. We're back where we started. Kadosh, kadosh, kadosh. Naritzcha v'nakdishcha. This whole section is bracketed by God's holiness, and that holiness is explored through God's glory filling the whole world, this ongoing search for God's glory, finding it in a particular place, feeling the compassion from that place, which calls us to recite the Shema twice a day, which calls us to affirm and reaffirm God's oneness. God's oneness is then experienced through the multiplicity of how God shows up in our life. And then we ask for that God to redeem us, right? To reign forever. And then we acknowledge that this is a generational project that we're in to affirm and reaffirm that holiness. Okay. That was more of a lecture than I intended. I'm happy to stay on a little bit longer, although folks are welcome to leave at this point because we hit the 8:30 mark. But if folks have reactions to what I just said, because that was a lot of information about the Kedusha and hopefully new information for some of you, I'm happy to stay on and discuss a little bit longer. But I'm also dismissing anyone whose brain stops working well at 8:30 p.m. And so I thank you. A reminder before you leave, we're not meeting next Thursday because next Thursday is Purim. We are meeting next Wednesday. So we're not skipping a week. We're meeting next Wednesday instead of next Thursday in deference to Purim. Okay, so I will see, I hope many of you on Wednesday night, if not sooner. Thank you again for coming tonight. And I'll stand a little bit longer if anyone wants to chat about the Kedusha. All right, Laila Tov.
Is there any reason that we don't keep this going forever and ever and we just keep learning? Because I think this is amazing.
Are you talking about the Kedusha or this class?
The class.
The class. If there is sufficient interest, I am happy to extend beyond next week. We might have to we'll have to look at the calendars and see if it's still a Thursday night class or if we need to skip a week or two. Because I only blocked out the weeks that I have for Thursday nights. But I'm happy to keep this going as long as there's interest.
There's so much more to learn.
True, definitely true.
Anyway, yes, sorry, didn't
Thank you, Sarah.
I'd also love to keep learning. See, look at everybody.
There we go.
Everyone. Anyway, thank you, Rabbi.
I like listening to you speak. And I mean, it's fun to sing along, but I've really enjoyed listening to your lecture.
Thank you, Peter. Thank you. So do folks, let's stay with the Kedusha for a moment. Do folks have reactions, responses, questions, observations about what we just learned with Kedusha? Gordy, at any point, jump in. Yes, Andrea.
I'd never known, I'd never seen all the parts of the Kedusha as you pointed them out. And I'd never noticed, because my Hebrew isn't that good, the continuation, the way one theme or phrase is then taken up and embellished. That's really beautiful to point out. Thank you.
I love how you said that. I think it's perfectly said. They're taken and embellished, right? Because I wasn't in the room when it was written, right? But I suspect that they started with the three direct quotations. Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. Right? Baruch Kavod Adonai Mimkomo and Yimloch Adonai Leolam, the bolded parts, right? I suspect that they started with those three, and then they constructed this liturgy around it, adding the paragraphs before and after, as you said, sort of elaborating on the theme. Or sometimes, almost like setting up the direct quotation to be delivered with greater force. I mean, the notion that they set up praised is Adonai's glory in God's place by planting a question into the angel's mouth, right? Where does God's glory live? Is really, I think, stunning. It's a beautiful, creative touch.
Thank you.
Florine, I thought I saw a hand at some point.
Oh, I have so many things to say. First of all, unfortunately, next Wednesday night, the Jewish Poetry Circle is going to do poems for preparation for Purim. So we have a real horrible conflict.
If anyone is in the poetry class and the liturgy class, I am instructing you with whatever authority I have to attend the poetry class. We record these sessions and I will send you the recording.
Great. Okay, my other question is the word makom,
Yeah.
the other name for God, which is mentioned a lot in the Kedusha. I feel that that's the key here. It's the presence, that we are immersed in the presence, i.e. makom, the place. What do you think?
I think you're spot on. I think you're spot on. Makom, right, which means place. In the context of the Kedusha, right, we hear it first. Baruch kavod Adonai mimkomo, right? Blessed is God's kavod, God's glory, although even that's not a great translation. In God's place, mim, or from God's place. Right? And I think it begs the question, is this place in a geographic sense? Right? We just said that God's glory is everywhere. So what is really meant by place? And Florine is pointing out that the word makom is used elsewhere as a name of God. Hamakom yinachem etchem, we say to mourners, right? May the place comfort you.
Yeah.
And so yeah, I mean, as you read the Kedusha, I encourage you to try out what it means to you to translate makom as a name of God versus a description of place. I think it'll open up new interpretive possibilities.
Thank you.
Janet, and then I think we'll close.
Okay. I think that, I think of the word as glory as mostly used in Christian conversation. Like Reverend Ed Bacon always talks about a glory attack when something is fantastic. He says it's a glory, like you see a beautiful sunset and that's a glory attack, or you see beautiful flowers. And I just want to thank you for you calling it out for us to look at the use of glory in our prayer, because I had never connected it, because I usually don't read the English when I'm going through the Kedusha. And so there's something beautiful about peeling it apart that way. So thank you for doing that.
My pleasure. My pleasure. I mean, the Hebrew here for glory is chaf bet dalid, kavod. But this is a word and a root, just like I pointed out, the kadosh is a root that does a lot of work in our tradition and is applied in all of these different directions. This is another one of these sort of super roots in Hebrew that really defies specific English translation. I'll just give you one good example of that. This same root is found in one of the Ten Commandments, kabed et avicha et imecha, honor your father and mother. Same three letters, right, as kavod. So in one context, it means glory. In one context, it means honor. In another context, when describing Israelite suffering in Egypt, it means heaviness. So, and you can sort of, honor, heaviness, glory. You can maybe start to see what the connective tissue might be, but it's an incredible word that it's not just that it means different things in different places, right? It's almost like it has a primary meaning in a particular place, but it takes with it some of the secondary meanings. And so yet when you consider what it means in a particular context, right, it's not just choosing this translation over that translation, it's trying to make sense of the meaning cluster and how it shapes our understanding. And at the risk of self-promotion, although you are the ones who are staying on 10 minutes late for my class at 8:40 on a weeknight, I did give a sermon a few years ago all about this verb, about kavod. I think it was called The Root of Change.
Hmm.
I think that's what it was called. And it's all about the different ways that Chaf Bet Daled shows up, what it means, and also what God's glory really means. So on that cliffhanger note, I think I'll close
Yeah,
the
we'll have to go into
class.
the archives and
You have to go, yeah.
find that
If you,
sermon. But-
if you go into the archives and find it, maybe, let me know. And I mean, I can share it with the class as well. Anyway, for those who are interested. All right, folks, lovely as always to be with you. Thanks for showing up. Thanks for singing. And I'll see you, I hope, on Wednesday night.
Kol hakavod, thanks.
Thank you.